I mean, this kid can make himself a lot of money if he would just look in the mirror and simply say, I got to get my act together, man.
Renardo Sidney Jr., born December 6, 1989. This kid can make a lot of money if he would just look in the mirror and simply say, I gotta get my act together. The words of Dick Vitale as he called a Mississippi State game versus Arizona, where Renardo Sidney dominated and had his full repertoire on display. Those words echoed constantly throughout Sidney's short career, as he never did get his act together in time to make good on his #1 high school prospect ranking. He was seen as a can't-miss prospect who stood at 6'10", had a big body and physical nature, could shoot from out to 3 in a time big men weren't usually doing so, was quick-footed for his size, had nice athleticism, and what I liked most was he had that dog in him, as they say, a bully nature that wasn't ever in the mood to back down to anyone. I wholeheartedly believe if the NBA didn't have their 1-year removed rule, Sidney would have been a lottery pick straight out of high school. He had that much potential, and he was that more advanced than any big man on the high school level at the time not named DeMarcus Cousins, and even Cousins he gave problems whenever they'd match up. His game actually reminds me a lot of Cousins, mixed with a little Zach Randolph in demeanor and on-court bully nature and inside presence. We've seen the stories of high-ranked high school prospects that blew their chance over and over, but not many not named Lenny Cook could relate to literally being a step away from making the NBA and being paid millions, only to close the door on himself time and again, resulting in a future no one could fathom he'd be where he'd end up. John Lucas, who trained Sidney preparing for the NBA draft, said only Kobe and LeBron were better players he's had in a workout. Besides Lenny Cook, Sidney may be the surest prospect that never made the NBA. He would do things in high school that had future pro written all over it, like walk the ball up and pull a deep 3, go coast to coast for finger roll layups, and catch lobs like a guard. He could have easily made anywhere from $40 million to $100 million based on his talent, size, and #1 rated player stock. Stock interrupted by an NCAA investigation surrounding he and his family taking money for services involving their son, and from there, even he admits, things began to unravel. In the blink of an eye, Sidney found himself overweight, out of shape, angry at the world, and denting his couch at home, watching guys he was rated higher than and got the best of, playing in NBA playoff games, building huge off-court brands, and signing max deals while he wasted away. The cautionary tale of how all the talent in the world was fumbled and never recovered. Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Renardo Sidney was a 6'10" power forward from Jackson, Mississippi that was a projected NBA lottery pick since before his freshman year in high school. In 2005, he attended the ABCD All-American Camp as a 14-year-old and dominated competition older than him by 2-3 years. He left that camp, some calling him the right-handed Lamar Odom, others Chris Webber, and someone sitting in the nosebleeds actually said the second coming of Magic Johnson. Sidney could hoop, and his path to the NBA was supposed to be a very short one. And so the poaching began, and since a freshman, Sidney was approached by every dirty player in the recruiting game, from representatives of coaches, agents, writers looking for interviews, you name it, and the Sidney family saw it. By his senior year, he was a top 10 player in his class and #1 in the state of California. Stunt number 1, the wrong guidance. How you mess up this one-of-a-kind lottery ticket opportunity actually takes limited effort. All you need is the wrong people around you, and that changes everything. In Sidney's case, it was his own mom and dad. All of a sudden, everyone wants a piece of your son, all while you live low income can make a person think about the circumstances, but a person with poor character can jeopardize it all, entertaining and getting involved in it to the point it compromises the golden ticket, and now no one wins and it's back to the projects. Whatever his parents could do, they did it to promote themselves and eat now off Renardo's name, and to say it backfired would be an understatement. Sidney's father signed on as a consultant at Reebok and was paid $20,000, all for his son to play for a Reebok-sponsored AAU team in California. Wanting to interview the father about his son? Well, that would run you about $1,500. Everything had a price tag on it, and Renardo Sidney would pay for it all real soon. At 14-15 years old, you can't blame him seeing his parents behave this way, conditioning him to thinking these NCAA violations were okay as long as you're a star player, and that's just not the case. He was even ruled ineligible to play his freshman year of high school because of illegal recruiting violations. The family then moved to California, which was an even bigger mistake, into a $1.4 million house they obviously couldn't afford. One they'd eventually be investigated for and cause Sidney's downward spiral. Renardo said he became Hollywood having all this given to him, and it made him not think he needed to work on his game, and he started off poor out in Cali. Things began to pick up though, and by his senior year, he was the 4th best power forward in the country, with offers from UCLA and USC. But behind him was sadness going on to see parents not just take advantage of their child's ability now, but ruin his future, all to feed their own selfish need to feel valuable. Sidney later said he knew they were getting money, but he didn't know how to say to his parents anything different. Although he did excel on the court and became a McDonald's All-American, he'd have to sit out his entire freshman season when the NCAA found that his family did take money and violated their rules. Before then, USC and UCLA must have gotten word the rule was coming down because they both discontinued recruiting Sidney right before it was announced, even though he had verbally committed to both schools at some point. The wrong people around can ruin your future, simple as that. Could be your own parents. Stunt number 2, college couldn't go worse. The worst thing the NCAA can do is suspend you from playing, which is a serious situation, don't get me wrong, but if they allow you on the floor eventually, that's a win as a player and student. You still get a great opportunity to go to a high-level college for free, and in Sidney's case, you're still a top-rated prospect, so keeping your head down and working on playing above board from there, he could still make the NBA just a year later. He also had to miss 9 games into his sophomore year for lying about taking money and eventually getting caught. Already, this looks poor on his resume and dented his stock a bit and made his path to the league take longer than expected, but most of all, it gave him too much free time to just relax and not work on his game, also to feel his talent could get him out of any situation, and that's just not the case. He returned from his suspension and played 1 game before he was suspended again, this time by the team for fighting his own teammate in the stands of a nationally televised game. Yet and still, he was considered a lottery to first-round draft pick. At worst, scouts still believed he would play in the league. He was that gifted at a young age. After returning from suspension, he averaged 14 points and 7 boards a game in 19 games, then fell off a cliff his junior year to just 9 points and 5 boards on a team that failed to make the tournament once again. And how could Sidney top off this one-of-a-kind college fumble? Well, enter the NBA draft early, of course, to which he went undrafted. Stunt number 3, hard work beats talent. If you haven't heard it before, it's probably the truest thing about basketball. Sidney admitted that all the way back to his initial experience at 14 years old with the recruiting process, all the free stuff and the money they were taking made him feel his talent would get him to the NBA no matter what. He began to stop working on his game and hadn't taken training seriously since his sophomore year in high school. Eventually, it affected his weight and his game because he wasn't the explosive, quick player he once was. A scout at his game said you could see he wasn't giving much effort on the floor, and obviously it was because of his conditioning. He went undrafted in the 2012 draft pretty much because of poor work ethic and uncoachable attitude. His talent didn't lead him to the NBA like he thought, instead into a sunken place at home and gaining more weight, slowly losing those God-given talents. He'd spend limited time in the D-League and overseas, but by 2016, it was all over and he was signing to play in small, state-based local high school gym leagues. Far from the NBA bright lights and millions he was all but promised with the cards he was dealt. A poor work ethic could be held responsible. He's currently a part-time bodyguard and high school coach. All in all, Renardo Sidney's story is a great lesson for any young hooper, and it's sad he had to go through it, but with parents like his, he was doomed from the start. He never became what he was supposed to, even after chance where he'd get in his own way because he wasn't disciplined. A surefire millionaire. Wow, imagine that. But for these reasons, his growth was stunted. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.